Oh man, there's so much to talk about art with this game. It's really great. I was able to find an interview with one of the devs who worked on Streets of Rage 2, but we'll start with Streets of Rage 1 first. I was able to find a lot of really great information about this game series. The game released in 1992, right? And at the time of release, Streets of Rage was regarded as having superb graphics. In comparison, at the time to Final Fight is the game that this game mostly gets compared to, and Street Fighter. The graphics were brighter, cleaner. The sprites were definitely made to be bigger. According to the dev, on the Mega Drive, it had a bigger pixel ratio, and this game is exclusive to Sega, right?
Yeah.
On the Super Nintendo, which is where you play Final Fight and Street Fighter. I guess like the sprites were smaller and stuff like that. So that was like one of the major things that I learned about the game, that they specifically made the sprites bigger and take up more of the screen space because they wanted that visual appeal of the big character. And I also came to find out the game design was inspired by Starsky and Hutch and the A-Team.
That's so cool.
So not only is part of the story inspired by that, the design was inspired by that too. The person who did design for the game, the first one, his name is Noriyoshi, and his other notable works were Wonder Boy in Monsterland and Clockwork Knight. I haven't played Clockwork Knight, but I've played Wonder Boy. You could kind of see, like, I guess the color palettes in like the Sega is like where they maybe overlap a little bit. You will also notice that there are some character similarities in Final Fight and Streets of Rage. I won't say that they borrowed, they were inspired by some of these things in the games. A lot of the level design is set at nighttime because of aspects of the story. I think like especially in Streets of Rage 2, you'll see like here with the carnival at night, before we were on the bridge, you'll see that a lot of the levels are set at night. My personal take on this, I feel like it makes the colors pop. A lot of the game, especially when we start to get to the music and stuff like that, it'll kind of make sense in terms of theming, why they would choose like such bright colors and stuff like this. The music, the inspirations for the music, it made a lot of sense. I think when you set these things at night, colors on the black really pop a whole lot more. Each character had distinct visual design. In this game, Blaze is wearing all red, Axel has his like white t-shirt and his blue jeans, and Adam has his like yellow shirt and black jeans. So they tried to make every character visually distinct so that way you can call them out and recognize them right away, which is really important for character design. In Streets of Rage 2, Ayano Kashiro, she was the chief graphic designer, the illustrator. She did a lot of work on this game, which I didn't even know that it was a woman that worked on that game. So that really made me feel like very inspired to read this whole interview about how much she worked on it, all the stories of things that she went through when she was working on it. There was a part where they had to like, I guess, outsource animation and artwork for characters. And she was so unhappy with some aspects of what they did when they outsourced it. She went back into the graphics and redid parts of it herself because it was so important. When the developers worked on this game, it wasn't like some cash cow thing. We have a series that's like making money for us or whatever. They really put their heart and soul and passion into making sure that everything about this game was really well done and perfect. They didn't really have any limitations on ideas. So you see that we went from a bridge scene, a carnival scene, and somehow now we're on a boat.
Yeah,
let's
go.
Full-fledged creativity when you were talking about what style we're going to talk about, where they're going to fight and all that kind of stuff. So it was really cool, super creative. And the thing that they did a lot too, she said that they would work on stuff and then developing games in the past, like it was like so easy to work on something and then change it. She was like, now the budget to do that, it would be really expensive. If you had an idea and you wanted to change something on the fly, it would be so expensive to do that. Here, if they had an idea and they wanted to implement it, they could put it in right away. That was a big part of what they did. They had an idea, oh, let's put this weapon in, let's put this thing in, and then we could change it on the fly. So they would work constantly late into the night on the visuals and graphic design of this. One other thing that I'd like to get into is like some of the actual characters themselves, which you'll see here. There's this character, her name is Elektra. She's really cool. There was a sketch that was done by Ayano. It's really cool because it kind of shows off some of how she was designed. What I really love about this, the ideas that are going on, or think about why these characters characters are designed the way that they're designed. So for her, she has an artificial arm, and that's electric, right? And then the other hand is a glove, and the glove is insulated to protect her from electrocuting herself. So cool. And then she's stylish, right? She's got on some fishnets. She's got on some like thigh-high boots and stuff.
Yeah.
It's really cool that they bring these characters to life with personality and storytelling visual elements. I just thought that this was really cool. This is one of the original drawings from Ayano Kashiro herself, showing the ideas that they wanted to have. And then you'll also see there's another sketch of a character called Signal. Yeah, Yellow Signal, that I really love about Signal. Is his luxuriant crop of hair.
Yeah, look at that thing. You know what? Okay, since you said that, let's go ahead and let's get my crop of hair out there too. So keep going. All right, let's do this.
I love it. Luxuriant crop of hair. Let's go. It's so great here. You'll see that they put in things. His yellow coat is soft leather. He has thin legs, beat up shoes, bony figures, a prominent forehead. All of these visual storytelling elements really make the game comes to life and kind of sets it apart from maybe some other games where it's just like they take character and then they have sprite swaps, and then the sprite swaps are like different, more difficult or whatever. One last sketch that I want to show before we move on, and that is the level sketch. The reason why this is so cool, it drew inspiration from Contra.
How cool.
Yeah, she said specifically, she was like, yeah, I guess it's like the last level in Contra. It also draws inspiration from Alien and H.R. Geiger, who obviously did the Alien artwork.
Makes sense.
You see right here, that blue egg that's right there being shown right there, that's the egg we're inspired by. All of this here, you could see clear Geiger influence. To me, was really cool. You always kind of put a little bit of a finger on it. To really actually hear it from the developer was so cool, to be like, oh yeah, this is what inspired us. This is why we went in that direction. This is why we made this character this way. So cool to me to see. I really love that.
I thought that was cool too, because sometimes you would think, oh, that type of art only belongs in the world that it was created initially for. But if done right, it adds to, let alone to that lore of that game or series, or be it book, TV, movie, whatever. And then it adds to this one right here as well, if it's done right. And it seems like Streets of Rage did a really good job of incorporating it without making it just so entirely random.
And that's the thing too, like the first time I did this level, how did I go from street brawling to fighting aliens? Like, how did this happen? As you start to go into the story, you'll find out why this all makes sense. I thought this was really cool. And I don't know about you, Jen, but I don't know if I'd be eating a turkey out of an egg. That's just me.
I would eat a turkey out of an egg, but out of an alien egg? No. It ain't happening. I'm about protein, y'all know that, but alien egg protein? Probably not. Probably not.
No thanks. One other thing that I want to point out is the artist that worked on this, Ayano Kashiro. She's really cool. She worked on this game and the second one, and you'll know her from her work on ActRaiser, which was really cool. I didn't know. And then some of the artwork in the fourth game, at first they wanted to redo, they just wanted to remaster a game. Then they got permission from Sega to just straight up build a brand new game. That artwork was done by some really awesome people. When I start talking about some of the stuff with Streets of Rage 4 later on, I'll share more about that. It's really cool. Oh yeah, and then the signs back here, there was a specific note from the developer that said, you cannot use real signs or billboards. You cannot use real buildings. No ichi, meaning no weird perverted stuff. You were not allowed to do any of that. You still had to remain within the world of Streets of Rage 1. That's why you'll see some of those signs back there that said, do baseball. They're not allowed to emulate anything in real life.
I always thought that at some point, like we've seen with like a games nowadays, where they will, like, especially like sports games, a great example, and where they'll have, because like lots of stadiums, they have sections that are dedicated for an advertiser. That I would assume an advertiser would pay to be in the game.
I guess this is like before that time.
Okay. Okay. Really cool to know. I always thought it was interesting. It's like, why do you make such a random sign? Can't it just say at least something that would make sense? Do baseball. Like, I'm down for baseball, but like, what?
I'm sure that there's funny story about it that I would have to like dig deeper into like developer interviews for. In playing this game myself, it seems to be like a joke within the community that really loves this game. You could probably make a good t-shirt off of this and make some money. Iconic, like people know what this is if you go and say it.
Again, those types of things really add add to the entire nostalgia, the community of these kinds of games. Great find, Ash. I'm pumped about them turtles. So let's see what we got going on over here. These turtles, they're in the spaceship right now. Don't worry about that. Let's talk about the art. Now you're gonna start hearing me talk about some of the comparisons a little bit between the differences of the arcade versus Super Nintendo versus Genesis. The arcade looks better because of the non-limitations that were on an arcade unit compared to a home console like your Super Nintendo or your stronger console, which was the Genesis. Let's go ahead and pull it back into what we know this about the arcade mode. Like if you look over here on the arcade turtles, first off, you could have 4 turtles on the screen. While if you're noticing right now, you can even see by how big these bars are. You can only have 2 turtles on the screen. Even if you had one of those really cool where you could plug in
multi-tap.
Yeah, multi-tap. You could plug in numerous ones. This game's not gonna allow you to do that. You can still play 2 players with the multi-tap, but you can play that without the multi-tap. If you look on here, actually, you see this screen right now? They are only fighting stone warriors at one time. They're only fighting foot soldiers at one time. These limitations were a part of the console. They could not have both on the screen at the same time. Otherwise, it was going to lag. It was going to make the game shoddy in its movement. When comparing to the arcade, foot soldiers on there, you got dinosaurs, you've got rock soldiers on there. All of those units are allowed to be on the screen at once because they were not limited in those fashion. More into the arcade. The arcade, due to it having better graphics, what was the Super Nintendo going to do to be able to compete? They had to really think about this. What can they do that this game is already rocking and owning? Who doesn't want to go to the arcade with their friends, show off? Who went back to the arcade in those days? And if you had a game you were good at, you wanted to go and show off that you were good at the game, and other people could notice that you were good at the game. You're hoping your siblings are like, oh my gosh, you're so good. Otherwise, it was just you saying, I beat it. And maybe at school, you'd go back and tell one of your friends or a couple of friends, and they'd be like, I can't believe you beat that game. That's amazing.
No, you didn't. You're a liar. You didn't beat that.
You should prove it next time you're over on a sleepover. So the SNES, I prefer the SNES's look because I feel it has the most stability from beginning until end. Now, the Turtles Forge graphics, phenomenal. Konami had crafted a game that was colorful, bright, and gave you options. If you thought the initial animation colors were too bright and you wanted more of the darker or true colors of the turtles, you could then switch it to comic mode. Allowed you, that's what that's running on right now. If you're looking at these color schemes over here, these are the comic mode color schemes on the screen. What the heck? Credit sequence didn't apply the difference between animation and color mode now that I'm noticing on the screen. When we get back to the gameplay aspect of it, you're gonna see that a turtle like Raphael and a turtle like Donatello have actually 2 different color skin tones.
Interesting.
More accurate, not to the initial comics, folks, but to the comics that came after once the cartoon TV show came out.
See, I was gonna ask earlier, the art of the turtles, were they more based on the comic book or were they more based on the TV show?
The TV show by far. The reason why it was a TV show is because it was catered to selling to kids. To really understand the Turtles IP, actually anything and everything you see actually meant to only sell action figures. So
makes sense.
Everything that you see, it's the original writers of the comic. It was a love project. They just wanted to do it, you know. They originally made like 6 comics, and they assumed that was it. It was over. They did good. It was something that did as extra. Then it got picked up. Was it Hasbro that had originally bought them? Hasbro bought it because what does Hasbro do? They sell toys. So now, how do they sell toys of this extremely graphic style comic novel? How? We need a TV show. So with a TV show, we can now start to do that. Now you're gonna notice these foot soldiers, they explode. If you remember the movie, they were humans. The original comic book, they were humans. Now, the reason why are they robots? Well, now they can be meaner to them. Now they can stab them and actually stab them. Exploding makes more sense to a kid. Like, oh, you just destroyed a robot? That's okay. We can build a new one. Oh, you stabbed a human being? You are disgusting. What's wrong with you? My mom said that's bad. You're a bad man.
Wow. I did not even know that. That's the thing. I watched the Turtle cartoon as a kid, and I never put two and two together with that.
It was so confusing to me as well, because I was just thinking like, oh, okay, maybe these aren't quite the same thing. I thought they were, but they're not. I didn't really questioning it too much, because the idea that they're selling for action figures, that's the same reason why once the popularity was taking off with the TV show, they jumped into the movie aspect. Then from the movie aspect, they jump into the video game. And even though, of course, they wanted them to do well, certain companies were behind it. Let's say it was like Konami, first two Turtles movies. Oh, I can picture it. New Line Cinema. They, though, still had to buy those rights from Hasbro to be able to go ahead and utilize it. And what did Hasbro want? Numerous ways they can sell more figures. You remember after the Turtles movie came out, they had action figures that looked a little bit more like the movie ones that looked like from the TV show. Second Turtle movie coming out? Okay, cool. Now we can have ones that look like that. Oh, you have Shredder. You don't have Super Shredder though. All of those things started to play into the fact of it was a big push for selling action figures. So when you're looking at this, you're like, well, why do they do it this way? Why is it like that? You can let yourself know it's probably because they were trying to sell action figures. It was a really cool thing. I remember watching this documentary, The Toys That Made Us. The Turtles episode for The Toys That Made Us was just absolutely phenomenal.
That's really cool. Also, you were saying earlier, there's a reason why there's two different color greens for the turtles.
In this instance, they were supposed to try to represent different types of turtles.
Oh.
Not all of them were the exact same turtle. They just all were turtles.
Wait a minute. The four Ninja Turtles, they're not all the same kind of turtle?
They're not all the same kind of turtle. Me growing up, I'm thinking they actually are related.
I thought so too. I thought they were like all brothers.
They're brothers because you know what? Family is more than just blood. Right, Splinter?
Now I'm picking up what you're putting down.
It's one of those things that's really cool, and at the same time, it's kind of mind-blowing. Wait, that is, I never even thought to consider that. I just, you did it, and you played. It's so interesting what things just go past us as a kid, and what's so cool returning as an adult, and because you're coming with a different perspective. You want to question things in a different manner. It's like, well, why is it like that? I don't know how often I was like, just cuz.
Yeah, that's just how it is. I just accept it.
Yeah, just cuz. It's cool. Wait a second, what am I even talking about?
That's funny. That's really cool. I wonder if, visually speaking, I know you were saying earlier that Turtles 4, there's like a Sega Genesis version, and which is Hyperstone Heist, and then the Super Nintendo version. Like, visually, are they, I wonder like how different they are, because I don't really have any recollection of Hyperstone Heist.
That's the one thing I didn't grab a piece of art for that I wanted to grab a piece of art for, but they are different visually as well, is that the Hyperstone Heist went way more with a darker graphic theme, almost kind of like Streets of Rage. There was a lot more stylization of deeper shades on the enemies. There was a much more of a stylization on the artwork back here, a comic book looking background than the cartoony look that you're gonna see right now. They did really well about Hyperstone Heist. It's the same game, give or take. Feels different because it just looks so, the art pops differently. And with the art popping differently, it gives you a different feel, even though it's Turtles 4.
That's interesting, because like even in some of my research, when I was learning about some of the differences between like the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom, like I learned like they had different color palettes, like all together. So that is also going to have an effect on how they could like draw and create the characters, because if you just try to swap it over, it's not going to translate the same if you're missing a color. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly right. 100%.
Cool. Well, that was really cool.
The last few things I want to talk about here to wrap up the entire art section. Since the arcade version, superior graphics in most cases, what kept the NES in the running for this game being so well loved was Mode 7. Mode 7 is, you'll see this the most on a level called Neon City Night Riders. This is the second bonus level where they're on the discs and they're going around. You're facing forward at first. It will shift while facing forward to a side view without no screen transitions, no cutscenes necessary, just while it's going on, and you get into your boss fight mode in that fashion. That right there elevated it to be that next level. But the fact that with how many other enemies you could have, the types of explosions that you were able to have on the screen that didn't lag out the screen at all for the arcade version, Mode 7 made a huge difference in the Super Nintendo version being being as well beloved as it is.
Wow, that's really cool. You know, when I was a kid, always talking to my friends about Super Nintendo, I always thought like Mode 7, the term Mode 7 was like marketing, kind of like how like Sega Genesis had, Sega always has that Nintendo doesn't. I forget the term, but I always used to think it was something like that. I didn't think it was like something that actually had to do with the development of the game.
Right. No, I know you're saying. What is the terminology for that? Because someone help us out here. Someone give us that information.
Blast processing. That's it. Neuropoxy. Yes. Myjin. Yes. Blast processing.
Perfect. Because yeah, that's actually one of the things that was an issue when they were having to, because the Super Nintendo was a weaker hardware. What they had to do is all the bosses just had to explode when they were defeated. And on the arcade version, every single boss has a different way of perishing. That comes off the whole idea of the blast processing. They couldn't do anything else more. There was no more space to use it, let alone to make it look good when it happened. Yeah. That was there where it's like, you know what, everyone, enemies explode, bosses explode, everything's just gonna explode.
Explosions are cool. It goes back to show like how creative they had to be with their limitations.
Exactly right. They had to be creative. I'm happy that artists for these games nowadays have the ability to have more at their disposal. Some of the creativity I feel is taken away when you're not forced to maximize what you have in front of you. You have too many choices and it's like, uh-oh, I want to go down this rabbit hole, but I totally forgot the other 25 rabbit holes I could have gone down. You missed your opportunity to have the right kind of mix and match that would have just taken this to a historic level, not just good, not just enjoyable, but where hopefully people are talking about the game that you put your work into 10, 20, 30 years after the fact.
That's the dream.
That's the dream.